Hello, I am Trace Osborne. I'm interested in digital media and bad animations. I would like to create the meme that really changes the world. Memes are what really drive me to greatness. So if I were to use the skills from this class to create memes and get money, that would be the dream. On background lesson 1, I used flash and a rectangle to create the sky. Then I used all closed shapes so I could fill the shapes to make this nice background. For character lessons 1, I drew a ship with people on it when my teacher told me what faraway people look like. For animation 1, I used keyframes and motion twins to create the short animation. On Magic Music Studio, I use Magic to create music for my videos and other projects. I can use pre-made loops or create my own sounds. On Photoshop Lesson 1, I learned how to select and to use the curve tool to edit an image. On Lesson 1B, I learned to use a text tool in this short lesson. On Lesson 1C, this lesson was an introduction to mask and the paintbrush tool. On Hand Drawn 1, I drew this picture with pencil and paper, scanned it in my computer, and edited it in Photoshop. On my interest collage, I used Photoshop and a green screen picture of myself along with images from the internet to create a collage on my interests. Just so you know though, I don't like Hulk Hogan. I had to select objects from an image and insert them into other images, resize and clean them up. My movie poster was a Photoshop project that was a test. It included me and my good friend Zach. I recreated the Space Jam poster. I got a random picture of stars for the background. I made this Trace Jam logo with ellipses and letters. I think it's my best Photoshop to date, as it's really recreating something without using anything from the original image. I used Flash to create this image for a t-shirt design contest. On Photoshop Lesson 2, I used the camera raw tool to white balance the photo and the basic slider tools to correct the colors. I then used several repair tools to correct errors. On Photoshop Lesson 3, I used a lot of selection tools to move items onto this plate. I also used the Alt Copy and Invert selection tools. I used Photoshop to create this. It was my yearbook contest entry. I made this spooky animation in Flash and added sound in Premiere. This is Photoshop Lesson 4. I made it in Photoshop. I used a lot of effects such as stroke or drop shadow. I made a Hawaiian postcard. This is Photoshop Lesson 5A. I learned about Camera Raw while doing this Photoshop lesson. I also learned that there are basic sliders within Camera Raw. I exported these images all together after synchronizing them. This is Photoshop Lesson 5B. We enhanced this image with optical correction tools, including the dodge, sponge, and healing brushes. We also use filters and adjustment layers. This is Photoshop Lesson 5C. I learned to use the red eye tool and the shadows and highlights tool for this project. I also used the reduce noise tool and adjusted her levels. This is Photoshop Lesson 5D. I learned to use the lens correction tool and I used the levels tool to improve this image of a Greek temple. This is Photoshop Lesson 5E. I learned to use Auto Align and Auto Blend. Then I used the lasso selection tool to copy and paste the fence post. Then I resized it with Ctrl T. This is my Photoshop Warrior project. I made this in Photoshop using many layers and masks. This is Photoshop Lesson 6. I learned to use masks for hair and channels for fancy selections to edit with levels and hue and saturation. This is Photoshop Lesson 7. I used a clipping mask for the texture on the lettering. I put a text on a path to make it look curved. I also used the character box to control the size and other specifics of my text. This is my game sketch. I drew this picture with a pencil and scanned it into the computer. Then I use Flash and many layers to add color and details. This is Photoshop Lesson 8. I used a pen to make paths. I converted a path to a selection. I saved paths. I drew custom shapes and I imported smart objects from Adobe Illustrator. This is Magix 2. This track is way better than Logan. I made this banger of a track in Magix. This is Photoshop Lesson 9. This is my Washington, D.C. postcard. I use shaped, starred brushes, multiple filters from the filter gallery, and smart layers to create this. This is my postcard. I use all my skills I learned from everything we've done in Photoshop to make this sweet, awesome postcard. This is my demo reel so far for my portfolio. I made this in Premiere. This is my business ad. I made this business ad for my business. Me and my girlfriend just sell skeletons. Logan decided to rip off my design and idea. He isn't Raveyard approved. He's really lying. This is Photoshop Lesson number 10. This is my video montage I made in Photoshop. It's all about a family enjoying a vacation. This is my killer song I made in Magix. I used a text-to-speech program to read the poem. The song and the poem together combined to make a song. I used a mixture brush to create these paintings by blending colors of a photograph. I made 2 sick paintings, and I made one with Mr. Broom. I used Consolate to get the sign in for my Photoshop certification. I used the 3D features of Photoshop to create this image for a contest. I used Photoshop to make this test on the software. I remade the Baby Geniuses poster with myself, Walter Jr., and an old man stock photo. I registered with Gmetrix to review for my Photoshop certification test. This is my web version of this portfolio.